Alright, so write a story which includes these words. It was the middle of the mathematics class. Mrs. Taylor, our teacher, suddenly collapsed and sprawled unconscious on the floor. It was terrifying. We have a story titled The Grasping Death. Alright, let's get gritty. Who wants to take us through this journey?
Tracy.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Grasping death. I had never been to a funeral before, as at the age of 6, my parents thought death was too difficult a topic for me to grasp. I've heard of them I've heard of them though. Dark, long trails of cloth glided along the bodies of weeping women who covered their red eyes with black knitted hats. Then they have a big party. I know this for myself because I stayed home when my grandpa died, and I was 4. I was told to stay in my room, but the sound of the steel pan flooded through my window. My grandpa was a pan teacher, you see, and from then I associated death with black clothes and party. What was sad about death? Before I knew it, it was my teacher who fell, sprawled on the floor, and she didn't wear black clothes, just a navy blue pant shirt. My teacher's name was Mrs. Taylor, and she was the nice teacher that smiled when you got your sum corrected. It was exactly 9 a.m. on Thursday morning in the middle of the mathematics class, and it was at nap time. It was in the middle of the mathematics class. Miss Taylor, our teacher, suddenly collapsed and sprawled unconsciously on the floor. It was terrifying. The chalk she held in her hand scraped against the chalkboard, making her incorrectly tell us that 3 plus 1, 3, but, sorry, tell us that 2 plus 3 equals 1. He sat there, none of us, the naive kindergarteners, understood this dire situation. Miss Taylor's pretty hair lay knotted around her face, and her blood seeped through her pretty pants. Miss Taylor, we finally cried. She did not move. She never slept during our scheduled nap time, so why would she sleep now? The blood continued to run as Corey, the oldest boy in our class, ran to his mother, the principal. Madame Collins ran into our class, but stopped abruptly at the door. "Oh, dear me," she whispered. She pulled her cell phone from her pocket and called the police. After, she called Mr. Taylor. "Mr. Taylor," Madame Collins said in her professional tone. "Miss Taylor had collapsed. I believe there's something wrong with the baby." I had never seen a man cry either. Mr. Taylor worked in the high school division of my school, and he ran faster than the Olympians in my class. "Maria, Maria," he cried. She was somewhat awakened by the shout, but she shook violently as spasms overtook her body. I think she shouted, "Help me!" in Spanish before she went back to sleep. The ambulance drove through the gate, and Mr. Taylor took Mrs. Taylor outside. Even before the ambulance parked, they shouted and screamed when they denied him entry, and he drove with Madame Collins to the hospital. Miss Lassie, the school nurse, came to our classroom and told us that Mrs. Taylor would be okay. She gave us lollipops, ones you get when you fell down the stairs, and she read The Cat in the Hat to us. Mrs. Taylor didn't come back the next day or the day after. They continued to give us lollipops. 5 days after the incident, they told that Mrs. Taylor was not coming back to school, that God had taken her to dance on the streets of gold. We laughed because we all knew that Mrs. Taylor couldn't dance, and we wondered why God would make such a bad decision. 2 days after, they told our parents to dress in black and send us to school. Mama didn't want to let me, but I begged and pleaded. We hardly got to wear our own clothes to school. I wore my long black dress to school that day. In the afternoon, we walked to a big bus and went to St. Mary's Church. There were men in black walking through the aisles crying. Mr. Taylor sat in the back, weeping to himself. Do you see that big box? Madame Collins asked. Do not go by it. When she turned her back, we ran to the box and saw Mrs. Taylor lying in it. We instantly began one of the weeping persons. I've yet to understand the party of a funeral, but I'm positive my family didn't like my grandpeople.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a story. How did the student manage to write all of this in 45 minutes under exam pressure so wonderfully? Wow. Zoie Hamilton from St. Kitts, Nevis. What do you think of this story? This encounter with death, this unraveling of what it means to see someone die? Oh man. From the perspective of a very young child, the sense of perspective makes the story more interesting. We get to see how a little child grapples with death, right? We get to see the misunderstandings and how the idea becomes clearer and clearer. It's so interesting. Look at these little gems. The child not quite understanding, and the level of detail in the story, it makes this seem like a real experience, right? Even the candy they got, the book that the teacher read to them, so many details. The name of the church is there. Any interesting things that you like about this story? Anything you might want to add to your repertoire?
I'm saying that when a student is able to capture death, in particular, one of the most controversial topics we would ever have to deal with, not only on a physical level, but to write about, and a student was able to capture it fully from the eyes of a 6-year-old. Mm-hmm. That is a perspective that is not easy to maneuver, least of all in an examination. Yeah. But to capture death at its very instant is the student really needs to be commended on this. Oh, yeah. And the emotions, the emotions are going to be one where even if you have not experienced it and you've read this story and then afterwards you experience it, you are going to get some blood-curdling moments as just a human being in terms of seeing what death is, how death is captured here.
Yeah. The level of detail that the student was able to write with, it's tricking me that this happened. I can remember this happening. Of course, it didn't happen to me. But it's so detailed that I can just imagine everything about it, right? The lollipops that they got were the same ones you would get when you fell downstairs. Like, just the thought of including those little details. It's as if the student is actually recounting a memory. It's like they're just writing from their diary to the exam paper. So, man, this is a top story if I've seen. Grasping Death. Pretty good title too, as the person in the story is coming to an understanding of what it means. And it's only at the very end. I like how we're seeing two stories happening. We're seeing the story of Mrs. Taylor's death, but we're also seeing the story of this person understanding what it means to die, right? This tie-in here is brilliant at the end, but I like what I like even more is the second to last paragraph. Do you see that big box? Madam Collins asked. Do not go by it. This is something a teacher would say, right? A teacher who has to deal with lots of little kids. When she turned her back, and this is something kids would do. We ran to the box and saw Mrs. Taylor lying in it. We instantly became one of the weeping persons. So it's at this point that the speaker understands, oh wow, she's the one lying in the box, right? So that kind of understanding, that aha moment at the end, and then tying it back brilliantly to the party at the funeral. They must have not liked my grandpappy. They're having a party at his funeral. Because a funeral is about death, and death is sad. Death is bad. That's what I've just seen. That's my teacher in the box. Such a good story. Good in the sense of the writing is good. Yeah. The chalk she had in her hand scraped against the chalkboard, making her incorrectly tell us that 2 + 3 = 1. That's brilliant. Because as she's falling down, that's the chalk is making a line going down as she's falling. So it's a big 1 being painted down. And it really shows that this happened so suddenly, right in the middle of, this simple math problem. The sense of perspective here is one of the things that makes this a top story. The sense of perspective, the level of detail, the showing rather than telling, and just how natural the characters feel. The characters feel quite real.